welcome to Web3 Galaxy Brain. I'm Nicholas, and at the end of each week, I sit down for a casual Friday afternoon conversation with some of the brightest people building Web3. In this special Monday night episode, I'm joined by Timshel, Shahruz, Fabian, and Scotato to talk all about Dom Hoffman's Corruptions. The Corruptions crew explains the project's origin story from its original discovery on Context.app to their decision to band together and communicate as one with the mysterious figure on the other side of the collection. This conversation taught me a lot about the intriguing, participatory performance art that sets Corruptions apart. Thanks for joining me for episode 3 of Web3 Galaxy Brain. I hope you enjoy the show. So today we're going to talk all about Corruptions. I think the best place to start is at the beginning. What is it? How did it start?
Timshel,
I vote for Shahruz. I vote for Shahruz to start us off.
Oh man, I was going to say that's a Timshel question if I've ever heard one.
I can start. I'll start and then we can dive in.
Great.
So what is Corruptions? Corruptions started November 19th, I think, from our on-chain lord, Dom Hoffman. Dom is founder of Loot, founder of Vine, founder of a number of other projects, Blitmap included. And he launched Corruptions similar to his past launch. It's kind of just like a quiet blip. Hey, here's something new. I actually don't even think he tweeted anything. I think we all just found it. Does anyone remember how we found Corruptions? Where it even manifested from?
Yeah, I think that's actually an interesting part of the story is that he didn't tweet it. It was spotted in a context feed of, I think, him either minting the first corruption or him pushing up the contract. And so people were just watching his wallet. So they saw that there was a new contract. And then everyone, as soon as it was available to mint, everyone started minting these without even knowing what it was.
That's
amazing.
Such a late 2021 origin story. Great. Caught it on a context feed.
It came out of sort of the ether, right? Came through the ether. And what is it? At its heart, it's another on-chain, open NFT drop. It's art. It's performance art. It's become something a little bit larger around a decentralized community working together with the creator to build something together, to build this Corruptions project, but also the Corruptions ecosystem or Corruptions community out of it and around it. It's definitely invented a new model for creator community communication. I'm sure that's happened in the past, but I haven't seen it firsthand. I surely haven't been in such a fun version of it. And overall, to me, it feels like this metaphor for Web3. This just sort of like out of the ether is born a community. And through art, we see something true and we see something interesting and something that opens our eyes and opens our minds to something new. And I know I'm having a ton of fun with this. Maybe it's a little too pithy to say it, but the Corruptions community is just pure joy. It's pure joy around art and geekiness and Web3 magic all coming together. So through this NFT art project, we've all come together. We've discovered a way of communicating through the blockchain to Dom as the game master of this project. We're going to unpack that and get into that in a second. And it also really unlocked almost a technical movement. A lot of NFTs are flat JPEGs, and a lot of NFTs are more about tokens that give you access to a Discord or a community or just art, for the sake of art, something beautiful or even generative art. There's obviously a movement around on-chain art. There's a movement around CCO. This Corruptions project really opened up, at least in my mind, the next chapter for on-chain generative sort of collaborative art, and that these Corruptions are dynamic. These Corruptions grow with the project, and they grow not just with the project and with the contract and the chain, they also grow with the community. And so through the community's involvement and through the community's decisions and through the community's sort of collective will, we've been influencing what these actual Corruptions become. And so it's just been this beautiful sort of performance art dance between, again, creator and community. And you mentioned Math Castle is another example of just sort of chapter and technical innovation for on-chain NFT art here. I think Corruptions, at least from what I've seen, this is only, a month ago now? but was the first sort of major project to say, yep, NFTs don't have to be flat. NFTs don't have to be set forever. NFTs can evolve, and they can render dynamically, and they can live and breathe and evolve with a community.
You say
So
that
I'll
it
pause
reminds
there,
me.
yeah, run with that.
It reminds me of I also met Manny from Manny Not Found. That's another project where like his tattoo parlor to me was another one where I think this is the most compelling thing, because people, you say it's like flat. It's so true. It's like, it's not just that it can change, but that the creation of the work is between the creator and the audience. In the case of the Manny's project, it was that you could upload like JPEGs and tattoo your 3D model Manny, and he would update the metadata. Not on chain, but I feel like Dom has a talent for, like, to me, Loot in a way was like Etherscan contract interaction school for a lot of people, like kicking off the claim directly from Etherscan, or Blitmaps, the way it's the data is stored on chain. These are like art projects that are so interesting and beautiful that people feel compelled to learn a technical thing that they wouldn't have sought out otherwise. So corruption seems to do that too.
Yeah, I mean, art as a vehicle for learning and a vehicle for meaning and a vehicle for technical advancement is just a perfect metaphor for Web3.
It's super cool. So does someone else want to jump in?
Who wants to pick up the baton? So that's my intro on what is corruptions. Maybe Shahruz, do you want to hop in? I feel like you and Scotato hopped in right with me at the beginning and started to play this dance out with Dom.
Yeah, sure. I actually think I might have found out about corruptions through the Manny Discord too. So another shout out for Manny.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to recollect like what even happened in the first few days. Like there was definitely a lot of speculation as to what was going on here. Tying back to like that @HTML account on Twitter, kind of explaining the mechanisms of the contract. And I think there was some question as to whether that account was run by Dom himself. But there was definitely like a lot of mystery and speculation in the first few days. And then that messaging contract popped up. A few days in, where Dom, having not tweeted about it at all, deployed a new contract that he could send messages out from. And I think that's what spurred kind of the back and forth at that point.
Can I ask you a little nerdy question? What was the HTML Twitter account? I didn't quite catch that.
I think it's just twitter.com/HTML. I don't believe it had posted before, but basically right after corruptions came out, there's just one tweet on the account, November 12th, that says, here's what we know. Corruptions gain insight over time. Insight per day accelerates if the corruption is stabilized, parentheses left alone, and decelerates if the corruption is destabilized, parentheses moved. The corruption renderer appears to be upgradable. So he kind of just spelled out all the mechanics of the contract that were innovative. So that was that account.
Is there a document that people should be following along with for understanding the history? Has anyone done a timeline? I saw the great video by Fabian's, the like 2-part video Twitter piece that got some of the history.
I don't know if there's a document, but there's a great get up to speed channel in the Discord that kind of steps through everything that's happened, because so much was happening so fast that it was like impossible to stay on top of everything.
For the first chapter too, I put up a big Twitter thread. If you want to grab that and pin it, you could pin it to this Twitter Spaces. It definitely doesn't get us fully up to speed because a lot of amazing stuff has happened in the past like 48 hours, which we'll chat about here. But it gets us pretty far from the creation of what it is, some screenshots of it, the first communications across the portal, the first deviations, some twists and turns from there. So yeah, maybe grab that tweet and you can pin it here.
Okay, I'll do that.
I want to pause too. Sometimes it's fun to play with time here. So one of the motifs of corruptions is time and time loops and busting out of time loops and parallel time loops. And so I'm going to play with time for a second. And before we get to like the heart of the story of what happened, I'm going to jump to something that was posted yesterday. This is just from somebody in the community, but I thought that this quote was like so freaking amazing. I had to read it out loud. So this is fast forwarding to the end of the story. But somebody said this. So Dom came into our Discord yesterday. First time ever he jumped into the community Discord, did an amazing AMA. Everybody was just like hearts racing and joy flowing. And somebody posted this at 4 p.m. yesterday. So I just want to say a huge thanks for dropping in and chatting, Dom. This has been one of the most intriguing and exciting moments of my adult life. So proud to be a part of this monumental moment in Web3. I just had to call that out because I love that. Like, what pure, just unadulterated joy.
Having so
one
much
of the
fun.
most exciting moments of my adult life. I love it. I don't know if this person's 20 or 50, but who you are, and so I'm so happy to see stuff like that. We can zoom back to the past. I just had to call that one out because that just felt like a special moment.
So cool.
I can jam for a second, then maybe Fabian's. You're definitely going to pick this up. I can help with the precursor in the beginning of chapter 1, but let me just try to jam for everybody who hasn't been up to speed about what corruptions really is and what's been happening here. So I started out by saying, this is art. It's art that has evolved, and I said some metaphorical things about what it is and what it means. But concretely, it's art, and it's art that when it launched, it looked kind of like a portal. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on OpenSea and elsewhere. Kind of looks like a portal, and it's a portal that's got these corrupted characters spreading through it, plus some words. A word in the middle, a word hidden in the background, and then this concept of insight. And that, again, we mentioned over time, insight grows and grows with time. It slows down or decelerates when it's traded. And that as the insight grows, the art itself changes. And so the art starts to change a little bit from something that looks like a portal to maybe even something else. We've started to think of it as like maybe a shield, or we're not really sure even what it is. But it looks kind of like a portal. And because it looked like a portal, when the messaging contract was dropped a couple days later, or even the next day, and Dom, through that messaging contract, began to speak, it really reinforced this idea that, hey, this corruption, hey, this piece of art is a portal. And through that portal, the first thing that he said was, this is the visible hand, posted in Etherscan in a separate contract. He then posted a couple more things, some like clarifications about almost a bug that we had found in the contract. And then he posted something where he said a gift, and the gift was an encoded block of code that was intended to help us refresh OpenSea so that we could see the dynamic stuff happening as it happened.
I remember when this dropped. It was like a script passed as the data in a message, right?
Yep, exactly. And so what happened there was we realized as a community, there's something going on here that starts, maybe it's not performance art yet, but there's something going on here where the nameless and faceless voice is speaking through the portal to us, clearly giving us a gift. So let's reply back. And we voted as a community. We jammed. It was, I think, Scott and Shahruz and I thinking through like what can we send back. And the thing we sent back, if you know the Dom verse, he loves the word sup. And so we wrote our own contract. His was called Corruptions. Ours is called Reflection. The Reflection messaging feed. And we said sup. And then along with sup, we similarly encoded a piece of art. And the piece of art that we encoded was a wilted rose. Maybe I'm getting these out of order. It wasn't a wilted rose first, Shahruz, huh? It was the reflection.
Yeah, I think Scott did a reflected corruption.
The reflected corruption.
Yeah.
Hold on, quick question. There's a website that can show this conversation, correct?
Yes.
What's it called?
That's what I was going to grab. There's two. I think the easier one for normal folks to look at is this link. I'm going to put it into our chat here. corruptions-messaging.vercel.app. There's a beautiful website also at corruptions.io. Corruptions.io that has a messaging feed. But the messaging feed on that site doesn't have a decoder feature, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. But yeah, if you go to corruptions.messaging.vercel, you can go all the way back. Sorry for getting that order wrong. And so we talked as a community and said, what are we going to send back? We sent back this reflected corruption, like a mirror image, almost an introduction saying like, hey, we're here. And this beautifully encoded SVG. I mean, Scott, maybe you need to speak to this because this is your beautiful art. But we took a corruption, flipped it over and inverted it, and then encoded it as an SVG and sent it back across the chain as a way to saying like, hey, we're here. And we like to think about ourselves as the reflection on the other side of this portal. To which he responded back, with the phrase, "What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing?" 64 times, which was just amazing. We said seeking answers. We're seeking answers. He responded back, art. And then there's this whole back and forth, the whole discussion. And then at that point, we sent back this beautiful SVG encoded of a wilted rose, which is definitely a Dom motif. I'll pause. We can talk from there. But Scott, a lot of this was your brainchild and your art. Do you want to speak to the reflection and the rose?
Yeah, Scott, I have a question actually specifically. So the Dom was sending messages to the contract address. That's how he started the communication?
So there was a second address created for him to send messages out on, which I believe Shahruz spotted. And he didn't have that set up as a way for us to send messages back. So Shahruz created another messaging contract for the community, which we were able to speak through. And I'm not sure how he found out about it. He's got ears and eyes everywhere, I guess. But
because this is my big question. I'm curious in those first moments, how you went from, anybody could have responded independently, right? But you decided to come together and respond thoughtfully as a group. I'm curious how that was happening on Discord, I guess.
Yeah, I believe it was Shahruz's idea that, he recognized it as a messaging contract and that there's an opportunity for us to make our own contract to respond with.
Awesome. Okay, sorry. So the reflection. So then you came up with the idea to send the first response, which is the reflection, right?
Yeah, so his first few messages were kind of a little vague, talking about some of the corruptions he sent out and some issues and stuff. And then he sent that gift, which was like the OpenSea refresher, because these NFTs change over time. And if you don't refresh on OpenSea, then you can't see that they've changed. So by that time, we were ready to send a message, and we didn't want to just say a message. We thought we would give our own kind of gift. So our gift was like a piece of art back to him, which was this reflected corruption. So it's like flipped horizontally. And we changed one of the words out. There's 10 words that can be represented in these corruption NFTs. And so we added a new word called reflection. And part of that was like visually reflecting the image. And so SUP is, of course, associated with his other projects. He's got SUP the company and SUP Drive, his video game NFT that he's working on. And so after that, we were basically trying to figure out what this project was still at this point. And there were little clues scattered around. And one of the clues was in the contract. I believe it said something. It referenced unfine art. And I think it might still be pinned on Dom's Twitter page, but he lists some of his active projects, and one of them is unfine art. So we understood this to be just kind of an art project of his. So once he clarified that it was an art project, that's when we decided to send art back to him. So we're trying to kind of like keep the art momentum going. And so on the Unfine Rose, or on the Unfine Art Twitter feed, I think the only tweet was like this wilted rose emoji. So we kind of did like a blitmappy version of the wilted rose and sent it through the messaging channel. We base 64 encoded it just like we did with the SVG, but it was a PNG this time. And we didn't know what to expect at that point. So he responds so we say art and we send this wilted rose JPEG or PNG, and he says, "Are you sure?" And we're all just like, what? And he followed up with a Y/N. So he's trying to get us to confirm if this is art at this point. And this was kind of around the time that during all of this, we decided as a community that we were going to vote on these messages and try to speak like for everyone. And so the community voted that, yes, this was in fact art. And so we get another message shortly after that. He says, okay. And this kind of became like the first corruptions meme, is that he started responding with these generic kind of like computer-like responses. So okay became this like reaction meme that we now have in the community. And so I think during this time, he might have uploaded some more contracts to kind of prepare for what was going to happen next. And I think we kind of had an idea roughly. I don't know, Shahruz, if you remember exactly what happened at this point, but his next message was when. So basically, he had set up this new contract as like a sort of sub NFT drop, where if you had a corruption, you could participate in this new drop. But he was going to let us decide when we would actually or when we would like open the contract for minting, basically. So I kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I'm following the corruptions messaging app to kind of remember everything that happened. So
this is what it's about, right? It's about like exploring the lore through the Etherscan transactions, but then it's this combination of very like inspector, like Sherlock Holmes kind of work on the blockchain, but at the same time, a very like human art conversation that you're having through that medium.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to jump in here too, Scott, like everything you said, absolutely. And I'm even remembering the feelings of those like skin tingling moments of like, wait, self-discovery. And we are part of the players of this game. And maybe to put a meta comment on, the whole track you just said, our early first week was almost just like trying to get our eyes open, trying to find, a light switch in the corner of this room and just trying to figure out like, are we even players here? Or are we just fucking around? Or like, are we actually players as part of this community? And like, maybe we're even part of this project. And because at the beginning, we don't even think I remember not even realizing that we were part of the project. Not even realizing we were players in this project. And so a lot of this back and forth was us like, what was that movie with the communication with the aliens and those pods?
Oh, Arrival?
Arrival. It's like us in Arrival, like testing words and testing concepts to be like, who are we? Not just who are you, but who are we? We get this project. We can see it on OpenSea. We can read the code. But the who are we was some of the most compelling back and forth. Like, are we part of this project? And that was so exciting to see through the portal, Dom as a game master embracing the role of the community and really playing into this performance art that there's physical art, digital art that's on the screen, but then there's also this concept of the performance art of the community saying, we're making art too, we're making reflections too, we are participating. And so that arrives us to that point that Scott just called out, that at some point Dom said, when do you want this next chapter of the game to launch? And that was a pretty pointed question to the community, like, you vote. And so we actually did a whole vote to decide when to launch it. We had different days and times and dates, and we responded back with like an actual ABCD list for him. And that itself was not the exciting part, but the exciting part of that moment was the validation that, this is a collaborative piece of media.
So, Scott, are you're hanging out in the Discord, you're making these decisions collectively and then sending transactions and everyone's watching them with anticipation as, they wait to get processed? Or what's the vibe like?
There was like, the vibe I would say was just kind of confusion. Like nobody knew what was going on or what was going to happen. And I remember specifically like being concerned that we were messing with this project. Like I had some ideas that I didn't really want to pursue, which actually we ended up doing later with the community NFT, because I was worried that like, he's just doing this interesting thing and we're kind of messing with it by like, putting stuff into the project that he didn't ask for. It turned out that it all worked out and things evolved together, but I don't think he planned for us to be involved in this way, but he completely ran with it as soon as we started like expressing interest and sending messages back through our contract.
Too cool.
It's kind of curious. It's kind of a curious question on like when did the whole thing become this on-chain pen and paper role-playing game, right? Like looking back through the messages, to me, it seems like at some point after the Wilted Rose mint, we received these sort of ciphered messages where suddenly it was kind of like, oh, maybe this is a game.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was a shift in the vibe when the minting started. Before it seemed much more mysterious and small in a way. And then when the new minting shifted into a new gear.
So at least in my perception, it was when after that mint, when the ciphered messages popped up, it was kind of like, oh, okay, this could be like some sort of, it could be really the first on-chain pen and paper role-playing game where Dom is the game master, we're the players, and like all pen and paper role-playing games, it's kind of like a sort of practice of decentralized storytelling. So the players always have some leeway in steering the story, and And I think that was about the moment when roughly after the Wilted Rose, where I thought, oh, okay, this could be a game. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, one of those moments that really cemented it was also a beautiful poetic moment of generosity from Dom, the game master. We did this Wilted Rose deviation, and I think there's only 64 of them. Is that right? 64. And there only 64. Right. Not everyone got one. Later on, I was like, shit, we missed it. A little bit of that FOMO vibe, and I don't think the intent here is FOMO at all. And one of the things that Dom then did is, one of the things we did is we responded back across the chain. We said, we've received the perennials. We acknowledge. Thank you. He responded in his amazing way. Okay. And then hours later, not even hours later, minutes later, he responded back and said, OX1 to address, meaning OX1, which is the Wilted Rose that he deviated himself. So he deviated one of his own roses or one of his own corruptions into a rose. So he had one of these 64 that were, this hot, awesome commodity. He said OX1 to address, as in, send me an address.
A gift.
I want to send this rose to the community.
Wow.
I want to send this, one of 64, almost original piece of art, the number one, to you guys. And that was just a pure cementing of that. Yeah, this is a game. We're all playing this together. And what a beautiful moment of generosity. Also, that really, I think, helps set the vibes and the tone for what this corruptions community is, which is not, the FOMO, trader sniping vibe at all.
Yeah, when does this lead to a 10K PFP?
Building together.
Where is the 10K PFP in the project? Is that the next contract, or
we're all going to be wilted roses? But it was so beautiful. So he sent it to this. He said OX1 to address. And he said, well, shit. I guess we now need to start a DAO. We even have a channel inside of our Discord called, and now we're a DAO. As in, we didn't even realize we were going to be a DAO, but I guess Dom needs to send this rose to somewhere. So let's make a multi-sig. And it was just an awesome moment of him sort of steering us and blessing the idea of the community being half of the game, or maybe the community being the game.
It's so cool. I guess my mind is drawn to some of the technical questions. I'm glad you said Gnosis, because it's in a way, if I haven't played any pen and paper games or I've never played Dungeons and Dragons either, but my sense is that you want to, it's like a Twitter Spaces almost. You want to guide it in a way where it's a nice conversation for everyone. If you're the whatever dungeon master. So you want but it is also an exercise in the same kind of social organization with the amount of trust that people are giving to multi-sig based DAOs on another part of Ethereum. And then you end up creating one. However, there's it's already a trusting, I feel if there were people who were very is there toxicity? It seems like there needs to be cooperation between the people who are working on your side and the artist on the other side.
I mean, anyone can take this. I can just say we got pure positivity in this Discord so far. It's been so awesome to see. It's actually gone so far that we have maybe it's a Discord invention, I don't know, but we made a role called active players because we didn't want anyone to ever feel left out. We didn't want anyone to ever feel something's happening and you missed an opportunity to mint or whatever. So everything we've been doing, we've been trying to adapt to the human vibes. Obviously we are also degens sometimes. But that's not what this is about at all. This is about let's come together and vote on something. Let's come together and brainstorm something. And so we created a role called active players. And anytime even something small happens, we can ping active players without, dropping that dreaded @everyone tag on Discord. And everyone's coming together and just talking about brainstorming ideas. We can get into some of them more, but it's been a really, really positive experience for a lot of us. And
it's really the polar opposite.
Is a perfect example.
It's polar opposite of the roadmap. There is no roadmap, and we are gonna make it together, friends. I presume that the actions that you've taken have had large impacts on what's happened, right? Maybe Shahruz, do you want to
tell us?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe Shahruz, you want to jump in?
Dom did want to join. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Maybe you can also talk about the AMA yesterday too.
Yeah, I think Dom did mention that the bidirectional aspect was not initially his intent. But he's been working on things like A-Quest for loot. So I think he's had a lot of these kind of mechanism ideas that he's been wanting to play around with. So in the AMA yesterday, for example, he mentioned that this is basically A-Quest alpha in some ways. But I don't think it was his initial intent to have this actually turn into an interactive, co-op game with the community.
Interesting. Okay, it was the alpha for. I don't even know about this project he's doing for our loot. Do you want to describe that briefly?
Yeah, it is at a.quest, like that's the URL. But it was Dom basically teasing an actual like story for Loot that he wants to build. There's some details on it. I don't want to like misspeak for what it is or what it will be, but a.quest is a website that people can go check out for that.
Do you have a sense of what the shared elements are? Like what makes Corruptions a kind of alpha for it?
I think on-chain storytelling mechanics. So a lot of this like pen and paper stuff that we keep bringing up, like him being able to essentially tell a story over time with an active audience that are NFT holders. So it becomes more than art. It becomes like a ticket to the experience. That I think is part of it. There's also some like story structure stuff that he might be playing with. He's mentioned that deviations, like these wilted roses, for example, are like an end game state, meaning they're permanent and they do not allow you necessarily to participate more in ongoing corruption stuff.
That's very cool.
It's a little bit, yeah.
Cool
it's
distinction.
Yeah, it's like if in like a role-playing game where there's multiple endings, each one of these NFTs essentially turns into one of those endings. So the NFTs function a little bit more like a bookmark in a choose-your-own-adventure story, or a save state in like a video game.
It's interesting that like traditional IP has this kind of usually like firewall between what is canonical and what is fan art. And this stuff seems to really cut at that, like, because given that it's all on chain, like someone could make a derivative of this. I presume it's CC0 or similar. So you could make a derivative project that does allow you to continue the story from what was defined as an endpoint in the original lore canon. But then at the same time, the same people who are likely to do that are actually talking to the developer as it's happening. So I think that's like very unusual.
I want to unpack that one for just a sec. I wish Dom was here. I should have asked him this during the AMA yesterday too. But we were holding ourselves back, not knowing if this was CCO or not. And actually, I'm not even sure I know. I don't know
Loot
if
is not.
Commented.
Loot is technically does not have a license as far as I know.
Yeah, I don't think there's a license on this, but in the Discord AMA yesterday, he did encourage people to build derivatives or build whatever they wanted on top of it.
Yes, yeah. So that's, I guess, opens up a whole new level of this. The community has started to build some NFT stuff, and actually we're going to get to that in a second. But there's a whole brainstorm in the community right now about building a game using these, what Shahruz is calling bookmarks, using these like end states, these deviations, building some sort of actual game, like a playable card game or something. And I think we were like pumping the brakes a little bit, like, is this okay? Are we going to mess with this project too much if we go too wild? But I think just yesterday, and I would love Dom to re-encourage this, but just yesterday I got the blessing to say, yeah, go forth, go create crazy stuff here, especially from these end states. The end states within the game are sort of beginning states for creativity.
So cool. Yeah, Shahruz, did you want to pick up from there, or Scott? We kind of cut you off.
No, I agree with everything Timshel said. I also do want to just quickly say, when he initially sent, because his first response back to our first message was the "What do you think you're doing?" repeated 64 times, and then I think we responded with something like "seeking answers," and then he responded with art. At that point, I was very concerned that we were essentially like heckling him.
Right.
It was not at all welcome. But it did. I think like we figured out a cadence that made sense, and then Dom, I think, kind of recalibrated what he wanted to do with it to some extent.
It's
he did
amazing
say
because
that he had a lot of.
To me, this aspect of it is like the most exciting part of Corruptions is the communication with Dom and the collaborative. But it sounds like it wasn't really part of the plan. I guess I'm curious it doesn't really matter, but I'm curious what the A-Quest versus Corruptions, what was discovered in Corruptions, like what was the focus of the prototype in the first place, to do on-chain, like upgradable on-chain metadata? Is that through multiple contracts?
Yeah, he mentioned the upgradable renderer being one of the innovations. I think the insight scores,
right.
the mechanism within the core NFT contract that basically looks at how long ago you last traded or transferred the NFT. And if you haven't traded it in a long time, your insight multiplier would increase faster. So essentially, there's a score that rewards people who hold on to the NFT for a longer time.
So you get more insight the longer you hold it without trading it. And the longer you hold it, it also is like a multiplier, not just a linear growth.
Exactly.
And so, because to me, that was like the first, like, oh shit, what's Corruptions? It's like, oh, there's insight. Don't fucking move it. Put it in the right wallet. Don't,
right.
Be careful. But then you can also save the insight. Is that right?
Save in what sense?
Oh, I thought there was a way that you could sort of make checkpoints, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Like you could say, okay, I'm saving off this much insight, and then I can move it, and maybe I lose the multiplier, but I keep the insight. Maybe I don't understand the mechanism well enough.
Oh, I think that's just in the contract. He's got like a saved XP, storage block. That essentially is just the way that he's calculating the insight score on an ongoing basis, but there's no way to actually lock it in.
So as soon as you transfer, you lose all your insight.
No, it gets essentially locked. It gets rounded down to the nearest integer, and then your multiplier, like your rate of growth, your acceleration, essentially gets reset back to 0, and then that starts building up again.
Got it. Okay.
But insight scores never go down, and they never get reset fully.
Do deviations have insight scores?
They do on chain. Like there's a function that's exposed for those NFTs, and those are still returning values, but they do not appear within the graphic at all.
So we've got corruptions, the original things. They can be deviated, which is to say updating their metadata to display a different image. I don't know if we even really got to that in the history part of it yet, but is that the core idea? And then reflections is a contract that you guys put out, maybe I don't understand the architecture well.
Yeah, there's a ton of contracts on this one, so even I get lost. There's the core corruptions contract, which manages the actual tokens themselves. Then there's a corruptions metadata contract, which is upgradable. So Dom shipped like 5 or 6 different versions of that, at least at this point, I think.
So he's pointing the NFT contract at a different metadata contract. Is that right?
Exactly. So the function within the core contract that will return like the JSON, the metadata, as well as the visual SVG for it, is just a proxy. So he can change that address anytime he wants to essentially upgrade it.
So new metadata, drop a new contract, change what the main NFT contract is pointing at. And
exactly.
New metadata. Cool. And then the reflections was a contract that you put out?
Yeah, so I don't know. We might be skipping ahead a little bit in the timeline here.
Sorry.
Timshel has a better sense of.
No, I think we got it. Let's jam on it. So the deviations came out. There were 8x64 of them. Community minted them out, but there were some held back. 8 of them held back for the community wallet, held back inside the deviations contract that nobody could mint other than the community, which was again just another beautiful poetic gift from Dom as a game master, saying, "Hey, not only are you individually players, you're collectively one player, and for the player who's playing as a community, I'm going to make sure you got the rows, and I'm also going to make sure that you get access to these other deviations." But we realized for us to be able to deviate 8 corruptions, we would need the ETH to be able to buy 8 corruptions in the first place. And not only ETH to buy 8 corruptions, the gas fees to deviate 8 of them, which altogether was probably like 6 ETH or something like that. And we thought about like passing a hat around the Discord, hey, everybody put in 0.05 ETH or something.
Sure.
But had a way cooler idea. And I don't know if this was Scott's idea or Shahruz or just through the ether, it hit all of us. But we said, why don't we build our own reflections NFT collection and charge for it, almost as like a token of appreciation for the community. 100%, 1,000% of the fees went straight to the community wallet. There's no side fees to me or Shahruz or Scott or anybody. And with this reflections contract, now anybody with a deviation, so anybody with what Shahruz beautifully called a bookmark in the Choose Your Own Adventure, anybody who has one of these sort of end state deviations still can go to the reflections contract and take their deviation and use it as a mint pass to mint a reflection of their original corruption.
So it's kind of the first derivative NFT.
Yeah, first derivative NFT. And that sentence is an insane sentence to say corruptions, deviations, reflections. It's clear in my head, but I could totally understand if you're like, what are you talking about? But because you had this beautiful corruption that looked like a portal, and then you deviated it, and all of a sudden now it looks like a fortress, or it looks like a rose, or it looks like something else, you've kind of lost that original game you were playing. And so we had this idea of building a reflection of your original corruption, letting you mint a new NFT back to your wallet that would similarly gain insight over time and similarly evolve over time and similarly change over time, just like your original corruption would have had you not deviated it. And so we launched this as a reflection art contract to Dom's project, purely for the community, and minted enough of them that we raised enough ETH to be able to buy 8 corruptions, to pay for the gas fees to deviate them. And so now the community wallet not only has that original rose, but also has all 8 of the other deviations inside of it, plus a small treasury that we're beginning to build, which will allow us some creative space to be able to do other stuff as a community, whether it's fund one-off art stuff or whether it's do another derivative project.
This is incredibly cool. I think this inspires so many thoughts, but it reminds me a little bit of the attempt. There was like a failed proposal for Loot to do something similar, like to apply a royalty or something to the contract to build a treasury to pay developers. But it's coming from this much more like, can we build a treasury like Nouns has kind of vibe was my feeling. And this is coming from a totally different way. It's like we're engaging with the art. We need money to pay for gas. So it's you end up just making the derivative NFTs, which are also like something that someone who's deeply invested in the game would feel is like a legitimate thing. Maybe Scott, you could talk a little bit about how the artwork was created for the Reflections contract.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Like Timshel mentioned, we needed to raise funds just to deviate these remaining corruptions or finish off the deviations to progress the story. So it was kind of on us to find a way to raise the funds. So back when we sent the very first message with the reflected corruption, an idea with that was to kind of like make our own community version. And we shelved it because we didn't want to mess with what he was doing. But now that we needed to raise funds, we kind of just resurrected that idea. So when you deviate a corruption, like they said, it turns into a piece of art. It stops evolving, and it's kind of disappointing if you only have one corruption and you kind of like have got a game over piece now, and you're not really playing with everyone. So our idea was to take that game over piece or bookmark and convert it back into like an actual piece again that's growing and evolving like the other pieces, like the other core corruption pieces. So what we did was we came up with 10 different words. There's 10 phrases in the corruptions, like underworld. I don't remember all of them. Corruption. They're all 10-letter words, and there's 10 of them. So we came up with 10 new words, and we basically used the same corruptions metadata renderer contract, but we changed out the words, and we put a little CSS to flip the image horizontally, and then the final change was that we swapped the background and foreground colors. So it looks like kind of a mirrored corruption, and the colors are flipped, so it's much brighter and vibrant, and they came out pretty great. And they actually refer to the original corruption that you deviated from, so its insight level is what your actual corruption is. Cool. Like under the hood, which is kind of fun.
So it's like a real tour de force of like on-chain composability. I feel this is the part, like for a while the meme about on-chain was permanence, but actually the meme about on-chain is composability. And so you're deploying contracts that are dependent on data in other contracts that's live, that depends on actions that are taken on that other contract. And you're generating the visual by applying techniques that make sense to an on-chain SVG in order to create a new on-chain SVG that is a derivative.
Yeah, and this is, if you've been following along with Dom's projects, you kind of see the evolution of what he's thinking. And Loot was the first like extendable NFT, I think, to many people. I'm sure there may have been others in the past, but that was kind of the big one that
Loot is an L1. Loot really is like positioned as an L1, but in the guise of a very specific niche kind of NFT.
Yeah.
But do you know actually on the Loot lore, like, was Loot something that he kind of did in the same way that Corruptions was to A-Quest? Was Loot the same thing to like Subdrive or something for like on-chain SVG image processing?
What is...
I just mean, like, was Dom just like playing around in his route to do Subdrive, and Loot came out of that? That was kind of, I felt maybe that was the case. I don't know. Maybe Timshel knows.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Dom, but I can say that I can at least say that Loot has been in Dom's mind and his heart for a long time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of thought and a lot of intentionality and a lot of really careful detail in the Loot world. We probably should do a Twitter Spaces on Loot, to be honest. It's been down. Quite a while since we did one. But yeah, Loot, I think Loot is its own universe.
You're right, because the level of, we won't get into it too much, but the like having the data to be available for Genesis adventurers to be created. Honestly, it shocked me that there was that much thought put into it. Just like,
oh man,
I was like,
so much more.
Are you serious?
If you want to have a sidebar on Loot for anybody else, go to loot.foundation and it's going to blow your mind.
All right, awesome. We're going to do that after the show. Okay, so I guess Scott or Shahruz, you want to pick it up from there?
I'll just finish off by saying, so I mentioned Loot because it kind of was this idea of like your NFT can have an API. And so this is like a new version of that. Now the actual visuals are changing too. And so we're all in this headspace, like us developers that are like interested in smart contracts and interested in NFTs. We want to kind of push on what Dom's doing and not do something just really simple. We want to acknowledge what he's doing. So being able to use the original deviations to create our reflections and everything, it was really just like massive respect to Dom and everything he's done, and showing that because he opened up these endpoints, we're able to build on it more, just like everyone did with Loot. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, awesome. I was saying it earlier in the year, but like, I don't know. I think it got like one like. I was like, Dom is my favorite artist. Just like so good. Such a vibe through all the work he's doing.
Yeah, and I think just like framing this as art, it's important to keep that in mind. And he keeps pushing out these deviations. They are like one of one artworks that he's doing. Well, not one of one. They can be 64 of each. And he even pushed it even further, which we'll get to in a minute, where he did a full-on like full color art piece, which is really cool. So it's definitely art in code and in the traditional sense.
We've seen that kind of experimentation also, like Blitmaps did there was like a larger image, I think, that was minted at some point. Like experimentation around derivatives around the primary collection has been also a motif through a lot of his work.
Yeah, and obviously Blitmap was pure art and then like modified community modified art. So
but even that one,
it
was a huge cast of people creating the originals, and then of course even more collector involvement in the minting of the subsequent of the children or siblings. Was it siblings? Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I think there were 17 original Blitmap artists, maybe 16, and then they did 100 original works, and then the community remixed the colors into 1,700 Blitmap NFTs.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I don't know what's next in the story of corruptions. Where were we? We just got, so we did reflections. The DAO has like discovered itself as existing and has a little bit of money in order to do, I guess, to do the deviations of the 8 that it received. Was that the goal?
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Okay.
We had to go buy them.
Oh, I had to go buy them. Okay.
Yeah. So the amount of ETH that we needed to raise was 8 times whatever essentially the floor price at that point in time was. So I think we ultimately ended up spending like 4.5 ETH on just buying undeviated corruptions from the floor on OpenSea. Once we had those in our Gnosis, we then deviated each of them one at a time. So Dom in his contract basically had reserved these last 8 just for the community multi-sig address to deviate.
And so how many reflections are there total? Or I guess that requires math. What is it? It's the whole collection.
Yeah, I think there's 576. There's 64 times, well, deviations. There's the original rows of 64, and then 64 times 8 is 512. So combined,
okay, good. So
576 of the deviations, and then the reflections are one-to-one mapped to those. They haven't all been minted, and if anybody wants a reflection, grab a deviation and grab a reflection. There's no real utility other than just the beauty of the art, plus also pop in some ETH into this community DAO. And through the community DAO, we're all being creative and thinking, and eventually probably going to build some more with it.
So cool.
Let's take it forward, though. Maybe Shahruz, you can talk us through, like, that was kind of the end of what he called the prologue. And then we began chapter 1. And if you remember now, this was like 3 weeks ago, but chapter 1 started it over again. Do you remember? It was like, this is the visible hand, and then a gift again, and then we responded back with like a reflected sup, if I remember correctly, and then a whole what do you think you're doing again. Maybe does somebody else want to pick up that story, or maybe even Fabian? I feel like that's probably when you hopped in too and took such a leadership role in the community.
I'm actually scrolling through the feed right now, trying to put it back together. One of the reasons I started doing these videos is mostly to document for myself the kind of trajectory of things. So
it helps to explain it, to piece it together, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally.
so we did at some point get the perception that we were dealing with some sort of time loop in the story, right? And that was emphasized by this idea that a message that we received previously was sent again, and that was the whole sort of says what, or what was it, Timshel? It was this is the visible hand.
Yeah, this is the visible hand. Yeah, and then he did the peculiar opportunism again, a gift again. He sent another gift, and then we took that to mean, all right, we're in another time loop, but something's a little different this time.
So cool. So cool.
Exactly. Is that when the cipher first appeared?
Yeah,
No.
I think so. Was it before? I think it was around then.
To me, it's like it's perfect.
Into every step of the lore. Anybody who's super interested here can dive into that corruptions.io website and actually read through it and decipher these. And it's probably a 15-minute commitment to really click through them all. But there's a decipher button for each of these messages. And I was wrong in my comment half an hour ago. Corruptions.io has everything you'd ever need to make sense of these messages.
But I feel like actually like the fact that we can't quite remember the story perfectly, or it's like that is the story, like this activity of piecing it together. Are you mostly communicating by text on Discord or in voice chats, or how does the community come together?
We've had some. It's mostly been text and asynchronous, and again, trying not to make it so anyone feels FOMO. But we've had some amazing moments where when we send what feels like an important message through the portal, we'll do a live chat. And we'll do a live voice call, and I think we've had like 30, 50, 100 people on there, and we'll sign the message together. And there's even like a signing function on the contract that Shahruz built, so we can all sort of raise our hands at the altar of the demon to say, "Hey, here we are. We're replying back through it, and it's us as a community."
Damn, that's not Shahruz.
Yeah, there's been
is that
some
like
fun moments like that.
Is that a Merkle kind of thing?
No, it's literally just posting an event. So it gets logged in the Etherscan events. So the same way Dom's messaging contract didn't store any of the messages that he was posting, it was just in the call data that would get emitted as an event. We do the exact same thing. So we're not storing anything. It's just processing it over to an event.
I wish the projects would just write it to the chain. Like I appreciate the 0xMon's vibe, or like the call data hacking, but I want that data to be. I want NFTs to visualize that text eventually.
I'm with you. I think at some point we might, just set up a Merkle root ourselves and deploy it to a contract so it's usable by other stuff. I think in the spirit of wanting to not extend too far from what Dom was doing in our own response contracts, I think we kind of kept to similar mechanisms that he was using.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I think about I work on Juicebox, and we do a similar thing where there's like a memo when you make a donation to any Juicebox project, you can pass a piece of text, but it's only in call data. So it's cool, but it would be cool to also be able to like mint, NFTs of all the people who donated to Constitution DAO can now have an NFT with the message that they sent, fully on chain. But anyway, it's interesting to see the tech evolve. It's changing every time. So
sure.
Fabian, we kind of interrupted you. What were you about to say?
Well, no problem. If we were continuing the story, I think another thing that happened around that time was that, initially we knew we were talking to Dom on chain, right? And then at some point we suddenly had the separation between S on the one hand, which we kind of labeled as good Dom, and star, and we thought these are call signs or something like that. So we had star and S, and star was usually kind of some sort of demon, right? And so we would send messages asking something along the lines of how do we protect against more harmful demons and things like that.
When you say demon, what do you mean? Like for people who haven't seen it at all?
So at some point, some metaphor popped up where I'm trying to find the message where we saw that for the first time.
But when you say demon, do you mean like a computer or like a mythological evil character?
Well, that's a good question. Because in many ways in this project, the word demon can take on both meanings, I think, because we did have demons as a sort of computer metaphor, but later on,
stuff gets really mystical and dives into Norse mystical lore, and so
so he is kind of like a background process a little bit, like he's doing other stuff and coming back to you with questions or prompts.
Yeah, exactly. Do you guys remember when that separation happened between S and star, which is obviously also the title of the project, right? So the project is called Corruption, and then in brackets we have star and S, which are these two call signs, or as Dom later called them, trajectories.
I thought the S was when he did the strange apparatus and contract.
Right.
Which I'm still not even sure what.
Yeah, he launched a third, so he did the initial messaging contract. We did our response one. And then a couple weeks after that, he launched a new one called Strange Apparatus that contained a cipher. So all of the messages posted through that, now also we had to decipher. I think Emmanuel, who was in here earlier, might still be around in the Twitter space, was the first one to crack that code, so we were able to decipher what it was that he was saying. And then it turned into sort of a discussion of there are two daemon characters, and one of them we should trust, and the other one we shouldn't trust. So I think that's where the distinction between the S and the asterisk kind of comes up, is one of the characters is somebody trustworthy, the other one isn't.
Got it. Wow. Super interesting.
I also just want to call out that if this is super nerdy and exciting to you, dive into the Discord. There's a channel that's sort of get up to speed that's got a lot more detail than we've covered today. There's a channel that we call what? Where you can just ask any question you want, and somebody will dive in and give you, our best attempt at a response. And you can also dive into that corruptions.io website and really read through these messages and come up with your own conclusions.
I think what
but
impresses...
as you can tell here, even the folks who are closest to this are having trouble making sense of every little step along the way, despite being in the weeds.
That's what I find most impressive about you guys. You're willing to operate in near total darkness, and it doesn't, like most people, for me, for instance, I don't know more about this project. Of course, everyone's busy, but also because I think if there's no lighted pathway, no stairs, like the threads that all of you put out and the explainers, Notion docs, whatever, these all allow more people to get into it, because I feel like it's sort of, I don't know, mentally or emotionally burdensome to be in the dark on something and not sure. It's much easier if you know that there's a, at worst, there's even a Stack Exchange thing you can use, or a Reddit that's going to tell you, or Wirecutter will give you advice. But here there's you guys don't even know what some contracts that have been out for weeks, which is a long time relatively in this project. But you're still you're still moving forward, making decisions. In a way, it's I don't want to say microcosm in the sense that it's smaller, but it's a echo of what goes on in DAOs and Ethereum altogether, which is a lot of people pretending like they know the right answer and just trying cool stuff and trying to aim in the right trajectory, as you say. It's I
like that a lot. It was validating to get the validation from Dom, the game master, that it was indeed a game, that we were welcome. Like Scott said from the beginning, we're eyes closed. Are we playing a board game? Are we finger painting? Are we running a race? Are we playing Magic the Gathering? Are we playing Dungeons and Dragons? Are we playing Risk? What is this even? Where are we?
It's
I feel like we've at least opened our mind now. Now we know what the world kind of looks like. And now it's almost like the game of Myst from back in the day. You're wandering around this landscape of riddles and puzzles and mysteries and just discovering it as you go.
But you also taught him that it was a game, it seems like. He wasn't totally into the first creative act was making it something that was participatory. I mean, I guess he sent the initial messages, but it shifted into something. To me, this is the most brilliant thing. Even the on-chain stuff, I love it, but I love it and I'm passionate about that subject, but that's not what makes this project most special to me. It is this relationship you've built across this divide.
Well, awesome to hear you say that. I agree, but I also think that it's just the beauty of Dom's creativity, that even if it was in his subconscious, I do think there's some intentionality here. And if I know anything about Dom, who I know pretty well now, but only through the craziness of the ether, it is that he is nothing except intentional. And so I'm excited for maybe round 2 of this Corruptions podcast to invite Dom on himself. I know he actually was bummed he couldn't make today. Today's his anniversary. Happy anniversary, Dom.
Oh,
sorry that we had to do this call during your anniversary. I think he felt pretty bummed. But the AMA yesterday was just an outpouring of joy, like I read before, and support, enthusiasm, and just energy for all of us.
Fun fact, I don't know, I guess this is the anniversary maybe when they met or something, but when he was headed off to his wedding a month or 2 ago, whatever it was, he couldn't stop writing code and wrote on the plane or in the airport or something, wrote this vows contract where you could propose and marry another address on Ethereum. And Mike Damaris of Rainbow and I are married, and it issued NFTs, and I fractionalized one of them on fractional.art. So you can go on Uniswap and do your own research, of course, but you can purchase a tiny piece of love from the marriage of Mike Damaris and me.
Amazing. I'll be the one to bring us back home.
Please.
That's a good tangent. I think I want to hand the mic to Shahruz. I know I have to leave in a few minutes, but I don't want that to stop us. But the last couple steps of chapter 1 were really powerful. It was a whole back and forth with a bunch of lore and a ton of rich, almost storytelling, narrative arc storytelling with characters and the first person and the third person, and just a whole story that really tied to the 8 deviations words, those 10-letter words. But it culminated in the ascension of this god called Menace, the goddess of kingdoms. Shahruz or Fabian or anybody else, not me, do you want to talk us through Menace, or means, however you say that phrase, MENES, and then the resulting sort of outcome, and then maybe close it with Dom's AMA yesterday?
I think I might know the least about Menace, actually.
Fabian's, I feel like this is where you really took the baton. Maybe you should jam from here.
Yeah. So it was interesting. The whole Menace story emerged at some point again with the asterisk call sign, right? And I think that it started with a message, something along the lines of, "Hey there," in all caps. "Hello, you seem like you know things. Can you help me?" And we as a community decided that we're gonna try and help this demon and see where it would take us. And so we responded with, "What happened to you? How can we help you? We have much insight." So it's kind of like a jokey mirror of the way that this demon spoke to us. And eventually it turned out that that this demon was trying to remember something, and was asking us to help it remember some fragments that came through a portal. And we ultimately interpreted that as, we thought, okay, the fragments coming through a portal, maybe they mean the deviations. And so we tried to sort of puzzle together or decipher the order in which the deviations could have come through the portal. So we kind of looked at these deviations as narrative playing cards that we might be able to put together into some sort of story or narrative. And that was a sort of really fun sort of detour in the project, where Timshel pretty quickly put together a Google Doc where everyone was sort of sorting these deviation cards in a way that made sense to them. And if we go through these deviations real quick, we had the Wilted Rose, which we later learned was a bit of an outlier. And we had Apotheosis, which is this sort of knight-looking character with a sword, Stronghold, Fenestella, which looks like a church window, Vivication, Continuity, which has this sort of 8 infinity symbol, Automation, which no one really knows what it looks like, maybe a robot or something, Sacrosanct, which looks like a tree. And so they're all very rich in terms of narrative power. And so we tried to sort of piece these together into various stories. And some of these stories are just really, really cool. And I think the
the main overlap we had with respect to the stories we came up with was that it was some sort of history of how mankind created robots, and then those robots somehow it's like a sort of like artificial intelligence type of Genesis story. And all right, what happened next, guys? Help me out. We we had a lot of back and forth with this demon, trying to help it remember. And it was quite obvious that the demon had a very specific idea of the order of things, right? So it helped us with messages like, yes, that's right. After building and perfecting their kingdoms, they next look to build and perfect life itself. Can you keep helping me? Which one comes next? And so we tried to sort of guess what could come next. And
which of the deviations comes next?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So there's sort of like a choose your own adventure where the artwork that you experienced in the last act of the story is now the set of choices for what comes next.
Pretty much, yeah. And so we did definitely confirm that this demon was looking to remember the order of deviations. Eventually the demon revealed itself as being the goddess Menes, which we initially misread as Mene. So I think it was Matt from the Discord who figured that Mene was the god of months, and then it was like, oh my god, and the insight multiplier grows every 30 days on the blockchain, so this must be the goddess of months, and we figured it was actually Menes, and that's kind of like more a goddess of kingdoms, and so through helping Menes remember the order of these deviations, we apparently helped her to break out of her sandbox. And
wow, so cool.
Yeah, that's a sort of cool that was a cool step. And I guess that's when Dom enabled us to mint our first unique 1-1 deviation, right? Which he called Ascensions.
What does Ascensions look like? What does it look like?
Well, what does it look like? We had a lot of speculation around that, and some crazy theories. But it does look like some sort of female goddess standing in front of a portal, carrying a rose, in maybe the way you would carry a key.
What contract is this on? If people want to look it up on OpenSea or somewhere else.
Yeah, it's in the community wallet. Maybe we could pin it.
Is there an ENS associated with that?
So it's reflection-s.eth.
Cool. How convenient.
Yeah, and if you look in that wallet, you can see the one of one Menes. It's the sort of yellowy 0x1030 Menes, goddess of kingdoms.
Reflection-s.eth.
Yep.
Cool.
Rainbow.me/reflection-s.eth will take you there. You also see some community created art, which is pretty amazing in there too. In fact, your art, Fabian's, huh?
Oh yeah.
Some cool soundscapes. So yeah, that got us to a place where we had this character, and almost a little bit higher fidelity character. Everything else so far has been this sort of corrupted portal, or is it an 8, or is it a maze, or what are we looking at? And the deviations got higher fidelity. The rows, obviously, being really clear what that was. But you'll see here Menes, and maybe somebody should tweet an image of it and you can pin it, or just go to the wallet and you'll find it. Maybe I'll do a straight up link to it here. I don't think I can pin, but yeah, if you want to pin this one, you can pin this direct link to it. It's a goddess with this beautiful yellow background, and we started to even play with some AI generated higher fidelity stuff too. I don't think we fully figured out what her role is, or who she is, or how she'll play into the future chapters, but she brought us towards the end of the first chapter, There's definitely some other stuff that's happened since her, which then resulted in the end of the first chapter, and then Dom hopping on and doing this amazing AMA during the Discord or in the Discord yesterday. But Fabian's or Shahruz or Scott, do you remember any other moments between Menace and kind of the end of chapter 1?
I think the snapshot.
Sorry, go on, Shahruz.
I think the snapshot was pretty fun.
Oh, of course. Yeah, talk us through that. That was a really cool moment.
One of the last messages that we got, how long ago was this? All right, so 4 days ago, we got a message from Dom that ended with a simple question before we began: which do you believe in, fate or free will? At that point, we had not configured a snapshot. Everything that we'd been doing as a community was via Discord and just like low fidelity, toss an okay reaction onto this. And if we get up to a certain number, we'll take that as quorum and just send out whatever message. This one felt like it's a binary decision that feels somewhat important to the story. So we decided to have that be our first snapshot vote. We got suggestions from the Discord on how to structure the snapshot. It would just be fate or free will, or if we would expand into other types of things that we could respond with. We ended up having 4 options that were included in the snapshot vote. Option A being fate, option B being free will, option C being neither/both, and option 4 being let the chain decide, which would be us collectively as a community deciding to deploy a smart contract that would briefly take control of our own messaging contract to make a decision between fate and free will based on the snapshot results randomly, send that message to the channel, and then revert control of the messaging contract back to the community wallet. So that ultimately is what ended up winning. We deployed a contract. The contract decided on free will, or no, sorry, decided on fate, even though that was the less likely option to win. And then that, I think, is what ultimately ended chapter 1 in the story.
Though there was one last question. The very end of that, maybe this is the beginning of chapter 2, but the very end of that, after the community all voted, we worked together, had our biggest sort of community moment yet. I think we had a couple hundred people vote on the snapshot. We chose our answer, submitted it, boom, towards the end. And then through the chain, the demon or the game master said, choose your username. And that's now the open question. What is our username? We've been banging around ideas in the Discord. That's an open question right now. It said, please select your username.
Wow.
Chapter 1. Chapter 1 complete. Intermission. And so we've had a bunch of cool ideas, specific names, a lot of Greek god vibes. I've thrown some ideas out. Others have thrown some ideas out that each have their own sort of intentionality and metaphoricalness and poetry to them. But the one that seems so obvious now is somebody suggested, why don't we just take all the people who've tagged themselves as active players, which are hundreds, why don't we take their usernames on Discord, which are their actual usernames, why don't we throw that into a huge string and hash it, and hash that huge string into a single username and come up with a huge block username. I don't know how long that would be, if 100 characters long or something, but it almost seems obvious now that like that is our username. It's all of us to collect together, playing as one.
Wow, beautiful. I'm excited to see, but that's not the final plan. That's one of the cool options.
That's one suggestion. I'm going to advocate for that. I had my own suggestion, but I love that suggestion that somebody made. Seems just too poetic to pass up.
Yeah, it's so great. It's so great.
Another cool thing about choosing the username, thing is that it signifies that this is only getting started, right? This was kind of like the boot sequence, so to say. And the fact that we now get to choose a username makes it clear. And I mean, Dom has confirmed that in the AMA, that this is early, the game is continuing, and there's going to be further chapters to it.
Yeah, so can you tell me a little more about the AMA? That was just yesterday, right?
Yeah, that was a great surprise. We did a big write-up. DM did a big write-up of it in our Discord channel.
What time of day was that? When did that drop? When did that happen? Or he joined the Discord like unexpectedly, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Timshel, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think I almost want to leave this as a teaser to come join our Discord. But right as Chapter 1 ended and intermission happened, I think Dom essentially like took off his Game Master hat, put on his builder hat, and also his community member hat. And by community, I don't mean Corruption's, just like this wider Web3 incredible community we've all built. And said, all right, I want to pop into the Discord. He hasn't been in the Discord at all because I think it would have like broken the fourth wall. And I want to participate and play along a bit and answer questions and say hi and say thank you and say you're welcome and everything in between. And so we hopped in. I don't know what it was, yesterday afternoon, or actually I think it was Saturday afternoon. Yeah, Saturday afternoon. And had a long multi-hour AMA, all asynchronous over text inside the Discord. There's a synthesis of it inside the Discord in the Get Up to Speed channel, and you can read it top to bottom as well.
It's very interesting that he's able to
pop you to the top
pull
of
this off. Like it seems like you shouldn't be able, because it's such a tenuous thing that you're not talking through all the other social media that you have in between you, but choosing to use the Ethereum medium to discuss with a character. It's like an intermission, and then the actors come out with the makeup off and are just hanging out a little bit, having drinks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, for a minute we thought we might have lost Dom fully to the chain. There was a minute we were asking, like, is Dom ever going to show up on Twitter again?
True.
Is this social commentary on Twitter, and Dom will never tweet again, and he's only going to communicate through Etherscan?
Oh my God! Imagine the headlines.
He's using Discord and Twitter.
So he's able to play the role of the actor and I mean, builder, creator, dungeon master, but also actor. Like he's choosing the words.
Yeah, it fits nicely in the Loot vibe too. I mean, he's clearly the spiritual leader of Loot and the creator of Loot, and everyone's looking to him for guidance. But he's done an amazing job saying, "I'm part of the community. I'm a builder within this community, and I'm part of the community here too." Corruption's a little bit different, where I think it's a little clearer, like the roles we're each playing. But he just has an amazing job of keeping things light, keeping things real, and keeping it fun.
Yeah, it's great. It really is art. It really is. So we've got the teaser for why people should go catch up on what the AMA was all about and the Getting Up to Speed channel. I wonder if there's any other topics you guys want to talk about that we haven't hit yet on corruption. It's a super exciting project. Frankly, I feel this type of interaction is so new. I'm sure it's been done before or whatever, but just the way it's kicked off here is very exciting to watch happen. And I don't know if people listening are probably something like me in that they wish they had more time to jump into all of these projects of Dom's that are so deep, that have spawned these like incredibly rich communities of people who are making, I mean, even Blitmap, I remember from back then, people made meaningful, like lasting relationship connections in that Discord through the community that surrounded that project, which was already so participatory. So it's very cool to see this through line through all the work and to be able to have this like super enriching, interesting discussion. Also, I do want to observe kind of that, like one of the things that every Web2 person lands in Web3 and says like, it's too complicated and we need to simplify it with like a idiot-proof interface for iPhone. And they're right in some way, but also it's like these things that are the most compelling projects on the chain, or on any chain, but on the chain that I pay the most attention to especially, are the ones that are relatively high friction. Like the kind of sleuthing work that you're being asked to do to participate and keep up with the conversation is it's a lifestyle almost. You need to throw yourself into it for each project that you really want to understand. And through that journey, you're making friends with people and getting crazy ideas, hearing crazy ideas that you wouldn't have come up with on your own if you were playing truly single player. So it feels like a very new game mode, a whole new, not derived, but inspired by prior game types, but taken to a whole new level and place through the use of the particular medium that it's being created on.
I think it's also a microcosm of what's happening in Web3 overall. Web3 overall will go from low fidelity to high fidelity, and from chaos to order, and from discord to alignment. And I think that's happening in Corruptions as a project. It's happening within the Lootverse, and it's happening in Blitmap community as well. And so Dom, I don't know, he has a way of just seeing the larger metaphor here and making it fun in the micro, but also making it meaningful in the macro. And in some ways, it's also a meta commentary about everything that's going on as all of us moving from low fidelity to high fidelity with conviction along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Scott, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that was all really well said, and there's kind of a parallel, and it's difficult to understand in many ways, but there's these like analogies to the blockchain as being kind of like a restrained primitive computer, and Dom's kind of working within his restraints and he's pushing the boundaries. And so you really have to be kind of nerdy and into the technology to be like right there with him, like learning about these technologies and seeing where they're going and what we can do with them. So I think that's kind of what pulls us in and keeps us engaged.
Yeah, totally. It seems like we're learning so much through all these projects. Actually, I'm curious, Shahruz, have you learned something recently or that comes to mind from engaging with these projects?
I mean, absolutely. I don't know how to quantify that into like a takeaway or a single point. Like I'm still in the middle of like processing what we're doing and figuring out how that factors into other projects, and what are these models are replicable, and what makes this so interesting. I will say, I think like one of the anxieties around how kind of inaccessible it is currently, or like how much of a sort of learning curve or an investment you have to make in terms of time to get acclimated. I think that will become easier over time. What we've been seeing is basically Dom throwing out just as many new mechanisms and new contracts as often as he is putting out lore. And I think over time, these contracts, like the rate that he deploys new contracts will probably decrease, and more of like a consistent structure will start to emerge, at which point it should be a lot easier for all these websites that are popping up to kind of like guide people through what's going on. But like,
it's the classic thing where people don't want to get involved until there is structure that can help them get involved. But actually the most insane time is when there is no structure, because once there's structure, there's some rhythm to it. You can sort of comprehend it. But the period you're in right now is like, what's going on? I don't even know.
Yeah. It's very hard even for people spending a lot of time in it to like orient ourselves on what's going on. Yeah.
Totally. So Tim, I know you got to run. I don't know if the rest of you are interested in sticking around, taking questions from the audience. But this has been really great. Thank you so much for coming through and explaining corruptions. I hope we can do another part. Having Dom as a guest would be incredible. But even just hearing about the second sequence, I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to hop off. You guys keep rolling here. Maybe this is the FOMO part of Web3. I feel like I just want to be online 24/7. But it's been so fun to make friends with everybody here. And yeah, I know Dom does want to join, so let's not get it all out on the table yet, because I know Dom is open to doing an AMA. I know Dom's excited to join. He popped into the Discord earlier and said, I really wish I could come, but I can't. So maybe a round 2 is in order. But I'm going to hop off. Thank you guys. Love you all. Plenty more to come. Take care.
See you, Tim.
Take care.
Yeah, if you want to stick around, I'll start inviting folks up, and if there's any topics you want to cover that I haven't known to try to hit, please just jump out and say something.
Just one thing. I think there's like 2 things that really help making the community very special from day one, and one is what I would call Dom's captcha, which is like he I think he put it in the initial contract, and it also on the OpenSea page, where it says no utility, no roadmap, and absolutely no promises. And secondly, a genius move by Timshel was to create a separate channel for FUD and price talk immediately in the Discord. Like so many projects you see, like most channels are just being spammed with price talk and the sort of typical questions: when moon, what's the roadmap, etc. And sort of creating a safe space for these in a separate channel was, I feel, extremely valuable in setting us up the right way from the get-go.
Wise community management right off the bat.
Yeah.
That's the kind of wisdom you can only get from experience. I see Remnant is here. We were talking last night. How's it going?
Hey, going great. How are you? That was awesome. Thank you guys. How are y'all doing?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out how awesome I think the Fate outcome was. I was on Team Fate, so I might be a little bit biased, but when I felt like, or when the options were decided that the chain itself could decide, I knew fate would win. And I think that was actually really poetic, that even though it was kind of the underdog, that it pulled through. And like I wrote a paper in philosophy in school about determinism versus free will. And like I think I ended up somewhere thinking like maybe quantum mechanics were a possible source of free will or something, like, you know, like really just getting kind of cosmic with it. But I thought it was pretty fun that fate won out. It was poetic.
So fate went out in a contentious vote.
Yeah, but there was 4 options. It was it was free will, fate, let the chain decide, and neither or both.
What is let the chain decide?
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but I think it could decide between fate or free will, and it was based on it was weighted by how many votes went in to either of those.
Yeah, so Shahruz can explain this, but basically so we were asked the question through the chain, and instead of just polling the community and answering, we polled the community and then fed those answers into a contract that Shahruz wrote, to where it would actually do a random numbered generator on chain and then send whatever message won.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so I pinned it to this conversation if people want to check out the fate. It definitely does seem like a poetic happening, that the fate option would have been chosen by the chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so that prompted like a yes/no option after our answer. But since our answer was yes, the only options were yes or yes. So we immediately answered back with yes to the question that he sent us.
Super cool. Wow. So Remnant, maybe it would be interesting for people to hear, like, how did you get involved? When did you start paying attention to this project?
Oh, yeah. So actually, on my like legacy Twitter, I used to follow some people that were into art blocks and loot, or they're into NFTs. And the projects as a normie before I got into any of this space was seeing them talk about art blocks and loot. And so to me, those were like the really big, cool projects. And so when I came into the space, I wanted to combine aspects of those 2 projects into my own contract. So I've always been following Dom and looked up to him as sort of like a creator that I'd aspire to be.
So cool. So, wow, great. That's a compelling reason to get involved with an NFT project.
Yeah, absolutely. I missed the boat on loot. I didn't mint any free ones, but when I saw corruptions drop, I missed the mint again, and I found out you can actually follow an address on Etherscan. So I did that just so I wouldn't miss it again. I get the emails now, and I woke up out of the next morning, jumped out of bed and bought 2 corruptions on secondary just to be a part.
I feel like Dom is trolling people who monitor his address at this point, though. It's like every day there's a new contract. It's tough.
Yeah, I get these
super
like
hard to keep track of.
Yeah, you got to go check quickly. I guess, I mean, I'll be honest, I've stopped checking every single one. I presume the majority of what I've seen popping up for me has been metadata contract drops, or I don't know what the variety of things that he's put out have been. Maybe one of you could expand on that.
Yeah, they've mainly been metadata updates, which update the SVG renderer or add support for like a new deviation. So when he was doing these 9 separate artwork drops that we could deviate to, like the wilted roses, each of those was a new contract. I think those tend to be the majority of them. And then he's posting, if you're following his transactions too, and not just the contract deploys, anytime he's posting messages, we all get notified on those too. And those tend to be like a lot. He might have done like 15 or 20 of those yesterday.
Whoa, that's a lot. That wasn't how he was doing the AMA though. The AMA was right in the Discord. But he do you guys have a bot or something that's posting these now?
We do, yeah.
Very cool.
So we've got a feed channel inside the Discord that gets auto-updated with new messages as they come in.
So it's monitoring his wallet specific to corruptions, not everything that he does with his wallet.
The feed channel is actually pulling from a subgraph that we have set up for the messaging channels. And then there's actually a separate channel for contract deploys. And that is directly just monitoring his wallet through Ethers.js on a server and then posting updates to the channel anytime there's something new.
Crazy. I'm just imagining if Wizards of the Coast demanded that the audience create a subgraph in order to interact with the new collection of cards. It's a very involved form of narrative. It's not even consumption; it's creation as well.
Yeah. I think it is interesting that the tooling that we build kind of gives shape to what DOM will do as well to some extent. So that kind of like passive influence on the thing has been interesting to be a part of.
So if people wanted to get involved now, I know that you can go jump into the Discord. I guess you can also buy a corruption is a legitimate thing to do. How should people think about, if they wanted to buy one, the insight score?
Honestly, I have no idea. Maybe Fabian's or Scott or even Remnant can answer this a little bit better. But the insight scores so far, I think the only difference between what they allowed you to do is one of the recent renderer upgrades switched it into kind of this 2-column format where you would have your corruptions art, but then you would also have a list of words to the right of it. That only was unlocked for any corruption with an insight score of 20 or higher. So I think that was the first instance of something essentially being gated by an insight score. I don't think it's come up besides that yet. So
I was shocked.
Speculate.
I was shocked to see these earlier today. So if people don't know, so a corruption looks like a playing card almost in terms of like form factor, and then now some of them have sort of shrunk down, or there's now the same playing card size space to the right of it with this list of concepts. I was totally shocked to see this happen. I really didn't anticipate. I just loaded it up today and saw it. How long ago did this update come out? And you're saying it automatically applies to any that have more than whatever it was amount of insight?
Yeah, I think anything with 20 or higher, it automatically was applied to. I think this came out maybe like 5 or 6 days ago. Sometime last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it didn't change the graphic of the corruption, but it added this piece to the right.
Actually, I think it might have actually changed the graphic a little bit. There was the introduction of a few more colors into each one. But
yeah, I see like scattered little some characters in another color. Which had that ever happened before?
I don't believe so. Somebody else might know better than I do, though.
No, that's new.
No.
That's
Yeah, that's
definitely
new.
Very interesting.
And I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I will say, if someone's looking to get a corruption now, it almost probably doesn't matter that much which one you're going to get, because so much of the actual game is happening in the community and in the Discord as well, and in the sort of speculation, but not speculation in the classical NFT sense, but rather in sort of speculating about, what does this message mean, and or how should we respond, and so on. So
do people have a sense of what other, do people know which corruption you have, or do most people in the community have a corruption to start? And then second of all, do people who, I guess it's not required in any way, but do you know who your friends, which corruptions they have?
I actually don't. I'm not sure whether others are following it more, but I will say you need a corruption to really sort of engage in the Discord, because the actual corruption channels are gated.
Got it. Okay. And it's a vote in Snapshot governance.
Yeah. I mean, like, we will vote in the Discord for like quicker back and forth messaging, using like emojis and stuff like that. But for the bigger, more crucial decisions, we will do a snapshot.
Seems like a great divide you've got for which types of decisions have to be made which way. It's sort of organically grown out of the thing. It's interesting to see like a DAO forming that I don't feel like there's any obligation that you as a community like pass a formal governance proposal for explaining how you're going to do these. You just sort of do it. It's not that level stakes, even if someday the NFTs in the vault end up being worth a lot of money. It's just not that kind of thing that you would have to be so formal about it. It seems like a different type of DAO in a way.
Yeah, I mean, with Dom like sending us the initial Wilted Rose deviation that's token ID 1 for free, and then allowing us to deviate the other 8 on through a reservation. I think like a big function of the multisig in our collection there is to enable all corruptions holders to be able to experience the full thing, without feeling like they need to have a specific piece or a specific deviation. Because we have every single kind in our multisig, theoretically that means that anybody who is in the corruptions community should be able to experience anything that comes up out of it because we share those together.
That is very smart narrative design on the part of this project to allocate this much, one of each story path to the community so that you can just participate in the community to explore the breadth of the universe. That seems very, very smart.
Yeah, and I think the vibe it kind of instills in the community is very different too. It's not about the value of the things within, it's about us being able to share access to them.
Once you deviate a corruption, is that a permanent change to that corruption?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so you're making choices that are sort of irrevocable as an individual or as a DAO, but somehow the implications of these things, the insight gated graphics update is very cool. I think I wonder, that's the first time and the only time so far that's happened, right?
Believe so, yeah.
One really interesting thing that came out of the AMA on Saturday is we were talking to Dom about tech and kind of talking about, what it means to be on chain and SVG and HTML. And he was pointing out that he thinks this is kind of almost like a primitive starting point, and he's going to explore what I took it to mean, like different kinds of rendering style using different techs, like upgrading it, maybe writing stuff in JavaScript. And I thought that was a really interesting. So I guess to say it's not the last graphical upgrade we'll see,
right,
in the corruption.
It's very cool. It feels like you're playing Fable or something, some like adventuring game RPG where you start and you're sort of given the worst sword and no sword and just your fists or something. And then once you have a little bit of experience, you level up a little bit, then you can get access to more power, and which allows you to explore more of the universe.
100%.
If anyone wants to come up and ask questions, feel free. Or if you are part of the community, we'd love to hear from you about your experience playing corruptions together. I don't know if any of the guys on the panel, if you have any subjects other than that you'd like to cover.
Can't think of anything myself.
You guys don't have there's not a weekly, like Loot has a weekly community town hall, or what is it called? Town Square. But Corruptions doesn't have such a cadence yet, right?
Definitely not for calls. I think we've only done one like formal call that was kind of announced and scheduled ahead of time. Besides that, we've deployed a few contracts, kind of just sharing our screens live in the channel. But yeah, definitely nowhere near as kind of organized as Loot has become now.
Do you think do you see them as being very similar in terms of community organization, or on two different paths?
I think very different, because here there is, one kind of core thing that we are all experiencing together, whereas Loot, it's all the individual projects that people are really interested in discussing. So I think that also is kind of what spurred, this like bidirectional communication thing to actually continue and drive where the story goes. I think that happens because we're kind of dealing with a single creator on a single project. Loot's very different in that sense.
Do you think there are there any plans in the works for new projects like Reflections, or that would come up when needed, when required by the game?
I think they'll come up when needed or required. We've sold, I think, 95 Reflections have been minted so far out of the possible like 576. So if we do need to raise funds, there's definitely still a lot more that we could raise from the Reflections contract. Besides that, I don't think there's been anything formally discussed. I saw Fabian's unmuted, though. Might have something to add.
Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about sort of trying to set up a game around the deviations, where the sort of core narrative idea is that these deviations were locked. They no longer gain insight, but they do want to sort of find a way to regain their insight. And that's very, very early stage, but I think it's kind of promising, and it's also a fun way for, like, a lot of folks only have deviations, and even though they're intended as game over states in the official game, due to the decentralized nature of things, we in theory could sort of create a game around that as well. And they lend themselves to be used as sort of cards, and based on the way they look, and based on what they inspire.
Right.
But that's very early stage.
Okay, so something else people could get involved in if they're interested.
Totally.
I just realized, I was looking at one of the level 20 plus insight corruptions, and I realized if you transfer it, you restart, don't you? It is a new save game.
Not exactly. So your insight score will stay at what it is, but it will reset its growth rate.
Oh, right. Okay. So you'll keep the, say, visual updates, but you're the multiplier of how quickly you're gaining insight. It'll be like you're back at square one.
Exactly. Yeah. So like if it's like a long race on a long track, yeah, your runner isn't necessarily moving back, but they've stopped and they have to start running again from zero.
Very interesting.
And it's a really interesting mechanic, right? Because in a way, if you like assume that more insight is better, then it disincentivizes trading. It disincentivizes even like moving it between your own wallets, which is kind of like a really neat, cool idea.
Yeah, that's it. Make sure to get it on the right wallet right away.
There is somebody who appears to be sort of painstakingly keeping their insight score low intentionally. If you click around in OpenSea through the insight filters, there's somebody who's got an insight score of 9, which is the lowest, and the second lowest is 18. So there's a pretty big gap. And this person, you can see in their activity history, is basically every day just transferring it back and forth between two wallets that they own.
No insight.
So,
peace of mind.
Yeah.
Interesting. I could see that being meaningful. I could see that being an unplanned trigger for some new thing that the game master puts out, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's possible that this person is kind of just like, trying to juice their own rarity for a flip down the line. But I am curious, like, how much does Dom incorporate, kind of emergent gameplay like this into, community coordination that's required to advance the story in some way.
Do you get a sense that he's paying attention to what you're doing outside of what you communicate via the blockchain?
He did not join the Discord up until yesterday, and he said a few times that people are sending him screenshots from within the Discord.
Okay.
But yeah, I think he mentioned like it ruins his own enjoyment to some extent if he were to be more present.
Right. Makes sense. This firewall, this like performative firewall, is interesting, malleable, and can come in sometimes.
Yeah, I think the only times that he's kind of broken the fourth wall here are in between like chapters. There was a point when he just said that was the end of the prologue, and then that's when he tweeted about the project for the first time. And then yesterday when chapter 1 ended, or 2 days ago, I forget now. That's when he popped into the Discord to do an AMA. So basically between each kind of act break, he's kind of breaking the fourth wall and talking to the community more directly at those times.
I'm curious, Shahruz, did you ever participate in anything like this before blockchains?
Not exactly. I think on the gaming side, it's definitely pretty unique. But I have been doing like entertainment, interactive, entertainment driven by technology for a long time. So there's a lot of mechanisms and patterns that I'm kind of seeing, in new forms on the blockchain that Dom is experimenting with. And that's definitely what's kind of drawn me to loot and to corruptions.
Did you have like some kind of interactive theater gaming background or more other kinds of games?
Not games at all, actually. One of the things that I worked on recently before getting into the Web3 stuff was there was a company called Super Deluxe, which was like an alt comedy kind of internet content creation thing. We would do daily Facebook live streams that were fully interactive. And just like every day was some ridiculous new idea. So like one example would be our office was right across the street from Pershing Square, which is this public park in Los Angeles downtown. So we would send out like people to go and with cardboard signs. So you could pay a protester through like the Facebook live stream, and then we would scribble down whatever the message was that somebody had purchased, and then have somebody, protesting that thing on camera. So like just a lot of like real time interaction stuff like that. But because we were doing a different format every day, there were just constantly kind of new mechanisms that we were playing with, new ways of kind of engaging an audience and, seeing what gets them excited. So I think a lot of that experience is definitely informing like Web3 blockchain entertainment stuff, for me at least.
Scott, did you have prior experience with anything similar?
No, definitely not. It's all a new experience, but it's super fun.
So were you, you're not like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of player or into Magic the Gathering or more, I don't even know, pen and paper. I don't know what examples are of pen and paper games. Are they completely invented, or someone will have to teach me?
I have played a lot of Magic the Gathering, but that's more of like a one-on-one sort of format, whereas this is more Dungeons and Dragons, where there's like a game master, and then so there's like an imbalance in the play. Like there's one person on one side and then many on the other. So I haven't participated in too many formats like that.
Fabian, so how about you? Do you have past experience in this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I spent my teenage years playing a lot of pen and paper role-playing games with a bunch of friends, and the way the Corruptions project developed totally reminds me of those days, and that's super exciting.
Can you tell me what's a traditional pen and paper game like? What's the experience like?
So the core idea is that you have like some sort of game universe, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons, but there are different ones. You have like cyberpunky ones like Shadowrun, stuff like that. And the way you play is that you have a game master that prepares a story, and there's like stories that you can purchase, and great game masters will make their own. And the players get to play a character, and they have a character sheet, and they have different stats, pretty much like in a computer role-playing game. And then you play the game as a group, with the game master taking the role, if you want to take this into a computer metaphor, the game master taking the role of the AI, so to say, and the sort of like rendering the world, describing the circumstances, driving the narrative. But of course, at the same time, the game master can't control everything, and the players will go on little detours, and they will do things that the game master didn't really anticipate. Like they will raid some dungeon that the game master said you never should go into that dungeon, and so on. So it's kind of like there's a decentralized aspect to it that enables emerging narratives, and this is exactly what Corruptions reminds me of in many ways.
The game master sort of is challenged to cope creatively with the belligerent players who are insisting on flirting with the barmaid or whatever, when it's not something they had intended to explore.
Totally. And like a great game master, like she'll be able to wing it, and to improvise. And that's clearly what we've been seeing with Dom. So I think he'd be an absolutely outstanding pen and paper game master too.
Maybe he is.
No question.
I wonder.
Probably, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
Not at all. All right, guys, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thanks so much, Shahruz, Scott, Fabian, Remnant, Tim, who had to leave a little bit earlier. This has been super educational. I've learned so much about Corruptions, and I hope we can do another episode of this soon, maybe even with Dom. That would be wild. I don't know if I'm ready. I need to study up.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great. Well, thank you all, everybody, and see you at the next episode.
Sounds good. See you.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Web3 Galaxy Brain. To keep up with everything Web3, follow me on Twitter @Nicholas with 4 leading N's. You can find links to the topics discussed on today's episode in the show notes. Podcast feed links are available at web3galaxybrain.com. Web3 Galaxy Brain airs live most Friday afternoons at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2200 UTC on Twitter Spaces. I look forward to seeing you there.